Kia ora e hoa. Ke te whakarongo mai koutou ki Arrow FM, your community access radio station. And, yep, it's me again, Isolation Blues. I'm still in my little bubble. I must say, as I cycle to work on my bike, I do notice more cars around. And I'm thinking, we're not on level 3 yet, people. So just, I know we have no... what do you call them, active cases in the Wairarapa at the moment, but those are only that's as far as we know. There is still a possibility for transmission, so keep it careful, keep it nice, people, all right? Hey, Jane Ross is phoning in with another film talk in a little while, but just before she does, I've got a bit of music for you. It's one of those things that people knock together, parody song, from America. It's called, well, it's like The Lion Sleeps Tonight, isn't it? But it's The Liar Tweets Tonight. I think you'll enjoy it.
We put him away. Put him away, 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 put him away. In the White House, the mighty White House, the liar tweets tonight. In the West Wing, the self-obsessed wing, the liar tweets tonight. Exotic liar. He says, hush you doctors, hush reporters, hush you science nerds. Look, my ratings are through the roof when I just say happy words. Everyone can get a test. It's just the flu. It's a hoax like all the rest. A left-wing coup. We've got lots of PPE. The cupboard's bare. It's Obama's fault, you see. The buck stops there. In the country, the quiet country, no nurses sleep tonight. But in the White House, the full of shite house, the liar tweets tonight.
Hang on, I'll turn that off so you don't have to continue to look at it or listen to it. Yep, there we go. Right, so that was The Liar Tweets Tonight. I'm sort of in my couch potato mode at the moment. I'm wearing a cap. I haven't shaved because Jane's phoning in fairly soon for film talks, and so I'm just going to kind of be Mr. Blobby, really. She's got lots of insights into great things that can keep you entertained and informed and enlivened and surprised during your time of isolation. And yes, that time is continuing. It's we're still in lockdown, and keep in mind that when we go to level 3, for most of us, that won't be enormously different. It'll be great for business owners who will be able to go in and prepare their businesses for normal trade. It is possible to order things online. You can make your orders. They just might not be processed straight away, but know that the business people are in there getting all that ready. Obviously, all the essential stuff is still happening. You know, you can go to supermarkets, you can go to the doctor, all sorts of things that are crucial to our health and well-being are still operating as normal. And level 3 will start to feel a little bit looser. There will be some joining of bubbles. Don't think that that's something that you can all do. But if you have a relative perhaps who needs support for reasons of physical or mental concerns, then it's possible to blend your bubbles, so long as you do all the usual hygiene stuff, keep well away from people that aren't inside your new double bubble, and you should be right. But just keep listening to what the government has to say about the correct way to behave, and we should get through this well. The overnight cases, new cases of COVID-19 infection in the community are really, really low, and we should be very pleased that we're nipping this thing in the bud. So long as we can keep the transmission rate below 1, it means that we're winning that battle. And wouldn't it be great to get to 0? When it gets to 0, that means at that stage there are no new cases. There may be cases, still people recovering, whatever. And then with any luck we might end up with no active cases. But we have to be very careful about opening our borders, because the rest of the world not doing too well. Some places are doing better than others. Some places, like Singapore, who were doing really well, they seem to have had a second wave. And, you know, we've really got to keep our eyes open to what's happening in the rest of the world, in case it's a harbinger of what might happen here. So don't rest on your laurels. Don't think we've necessarily got it beaten. But, yeah, we could be doing all right. I think we're doing very well. Right, I'm expecting Jane any moment now. I just want to check what the time is. Yep, she'll be calling any second. Phone lines are open. Yep. No, she hasn't called. I'm looking forward. I can always phone her. If I don't hear from her pretty soon, then I'll just I'll phone her. Just right now, I'll give her a text just in case she's having any difficulty getting through. This is the weird thing, you know, when you're dependent on people calling you, then you can feel kind of a little bit lost, a little bit at sea, can't you? So I'll just send her a big question mark. Right. Now I'm going to have to do some more prep and get some more guests. I don't have anyone lined up for tomorrow, but I will do. It's not that there aren't people who are very keen on doing something on the radio, just that I haven't got onto them because I've been busy with all sorts of other stuff. I'm getting, it's good, you can't hear that, but I'm getting this weird clicking in my ears. It might be just, you know, it might be me, general physical decay, you know, as I reach my twilight years. What was I going to say? I probably won't be coming in on Anzac Day, so there won't be an Isolation Blues on Monday, but we will continue. Keep in mind that staff from the library have been reading whole books, whole novels for your delight, and we've been playing them, one session at 10 o'clock in the morning and one at what's that? That Jane Ross is phoning on my actual hello, Jane.
Hi.
Yeah,
So I've been ringing the landline.
Yeah.
And it's ringing and ringing, and I pressed. It's just ringing.
It's just ringing.
Yeah.
Well, that's weird. I'm not getting anything here. But Jane, we can go back to that fun thing we did once before where I hold you up to the microphone.
Well, here we go with that. Can you
All
hear
right.
me okay?
Well, I can. How about you, everybody? Just shout out. Yeah, they can. Yeah.
Let us know. Yeah, well, that was weird because, first of all, I tried to ring you as per always,
Mm,
and it was saying that this number's not recognised.
really?
So I tried again
Mm.
and a different way, and then it just rang and rang and rang, and there was no one to pick up. So I thought I'd try your cell phone,
And here I am.
and that worked.
All right.
There we go.
Well, look, that's fine, Jane. And I'll when the program finishes, I'll try and figure out what's wrong with our phones. The reason Jane is not phoning on the or calling in on the video link is it does rather depend on having a robust internet connection. And I believe, Jane, at your end, it's you've just got a hamster in a wheel running like mad to drive your internet.
Yeah, I know, and I have no explanation for that either. I know that in my other job at Flyorda, we have been struggling with our internet, and slow it is making our operating system, and therefore how slow it can be to get through our work. So I don't know if it's just how things are at the moment, but I'm not a technical person. Yeah.
Well,
so
never mind. I do think that there's been a lot of traffic. If you're on fibre, then that shouldn't be a problem. But if you're not, then maybe you're being affected by a lot of traffic in your area at the time.
Yeah,
Does that sound like I know what I'm talking about? Because I don't.
You always sound like you know what you're talking about.
Hey, look.
Which is always very reassuring.
Good. Well, what's reassuring for me is you know a lot about films, and you're going to talk to us about films either based or having a connection to the Wairarapa.
And that's something I'm really passionate about, promoting and making sure that there is an awareness of the long history of film in the Wairarapa. And you're right, I went back to the wonderful resource that's available to all New Zealanders. If you've got an internet connection, then please do check out New Zealand on Screen. Now, I'll just say they are a charitable trust. The head office is in Wellington, and they've been operating for several years. And what they're doing is quite remarkable. It's basically an online database of the history of New Zealand screen content.
Yep.
And they've put some amazing collections together as well as doing profiles of individual film industry, television industry, screen industry people. And I mentioned a few weeks ago that if you go to New Zealand on Screen and put in the title Wairarapa, then you'll actually get about 24 different titles. That's not an exhaustive list, though. I've talked about many other Wairarapa-based films or films made by people from the Wairarapa that are yet to be included in the database. But I thought I'd start today with what you can actually access through the New Zealand On Screen database, because it's just wonderful.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to start with one of my favourite New Zealand filmmakers, Vincent Ward, who was actually born in Greytown in 1956. And he has returned and lived there over the years, currently living up in Sandringham in Auckland. But I thought he's a great place to start because he does have quite an extensive screenography. And it's really good to honour him as a local and for the films that he's made, and the contribution that he's made to Michael is really quite remarkable. So he trained at the Ilam School of Fine Arts in Christchurch, and so that was in the late 1970s. And at the age of 21, which was 1979. Between 1979 and 1981, he made a documentary called "In the Spring, One Plants Alone." And
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd really love to just spend some time talking about this documentary, because for a 21-year-old, still sort of, gaining your perspective and finding your way as a visual storyteller, this documentary is really quite remarkable. Vincent was looking for evidence of people still living a traditional Māori way of life within New Zealand, and he actually travelled into a very remote part of the Urewera Mountains and lived in a very rural, remote community. And in particular, he lived with a lady named Puhi. And back in the late 1970s, she was in her 80s. And the film really focuses on her and the relationship for her son, who suffers from schizophrenia. And to make this documentary, Vincent actually spent the better part of 18 months living with them in their house, building up trust, building up a relationship, but acting as an observer and interacting with Puhi and her son, Nikki, and really just coming to an understanding of how they lived their lives in a very remote community. And largely without sort of Western influence or intervention, really. And to see that, to watch this film in that era and in this quite remote, very isolated landscape is really something quite remarkable. So there's lots of background information about this film on the New Zealand On Screen database, but the actual film in its entirety has been uploaded to YouTube.
Yep.
So if you just plug in Spring One Plants Alone, you'll find that uploaded on YouTube here. So really Ward stayed with them while learning about Māori tradition, but got to know the relationship between Puhi and her son very well, and in a way almost became part of their whānau, part of the family in that process of living with them. And then decades later, in 2008, I think, you become a reflective filmmaker, and Vincent looked back on this film in the early stages of his filmmaking career and decided that he really wanted to revisit Puhi. She was no longer alive, but wanted to go back and actually get to know her and what her story was in the historical context within how she came to actually live the life that she was living. And I guess it throws up those sorts of philosophical questions for all of us. How do we get to be living the lives that we live in a particular time and place? So he travelled back to the village in the Ureweras, and it follows him, and he talks to the audience and gives his perspective right at the beginning that, he needed to go back and revisit. And so the film is part documentary, part drama and historical enactment, and it goes back and tells the story of Puhi's early life up to the present time when he first met her as an elderly Māori woman in her 80s, pretty much solely caring for her son Nikki. Again, a remarkable film, and he's used a lot of reenactments, and the actress Rena Owen is given the role of, he says, I had to conjure up Puhi, and he does by filming Rena Owen and using a process of filmmaking that's called remediation, where he actually puts her acting and imposes it into the historical landscape that the story is set in. Yeah. Really, really quite cool to go back and revisit your subjects all these years later, particularly having made so many award-winning films and then come back to it with the latest technology. to be able to add that historical story. And of course, what he finds in the process of researching Puhi and her own whānau connections is that the community in which she was raised was actually a community that had been built up by the Māori spiritual prophet Ruakinana. And Puhi herself, as a very young bride, married one of Ruakinana's children. And so what Vincent was not expecting to discover a very significant part of New Zealand's history. So again, I just commend him for bringing that story to our screens and offering an understanding of our own history as New Zealanders. And but also just, you know, that very wonderful process of not feeling that you've quite done your subject justice and wanting to go back and actually retell the story and explore that story and explore the people in that story in greater detail.
Yeah,
so,
and it shows a commitment to those people that he did spend that time with, and getting the story right, as you say.
Yeah, and so for that reason, I think start with the film that In Spring One Plants Alone, which was released in 1981. You'll find that on YouTube, and get a sense of what Vincent was doing at that time, and then, and of course, what get a sense of the story of those two subjects of Puhi and his son Nikki, and then revisit those people decades later in the 2008 Reign of the Children.
Yeah.
Both very remarkable films. And I guess, to give a context to Vincent as well, I mean, he is widely regarded as the master of the image internationally.
Yeah.
And films are very much characterized by very strong, iconic imagery. Both of these films speak to the themes of isolation, by the place in which it's actually set, a very isolated part of the Uruweras. But it's also a study of personal identity within that backdrop of isolation and within the backdrop of an isolated landscape too. So quite resonating themes here in our present time as well.
Yes, I can't think of any other filmmaker, if you were going to choose that word isolation as a theme, I can't think of anybody who does that more intensely than Vincent Ward.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, I mentioned the director David Stubbs, who contributed to my Lockdown Film Festival, and he also selected a set of 5 New Zealand films which spoke to the theme of the isolation of our time. And he highly praised Vincent Ward, and in particular recommended the film Vigil. Now you can find that film on another database called New Zealand Film on Demand, and you can also find Vincent Ward's Reign of the Children also on New Zealand Film on Demand. You can rent that for $4.99.
Yep.
So both wonderful databases. I'd start with New Zealand on Screen because there's so many interviews with Vincent Ward as well that you'll find that have been curated into a collection. There's a lot of information about him as a filmmaker, how people feel about his contribution, and direct interviews with him too. And but also sort of snippets of him in interviews over the years on different television shows such as Kaleidoscope.
Yep.
So you'll find great historical content there that really shines a light on Vincent's filmmaking over the decades. So, yeah, wonderful place to go to is the New Zealand On Screen database.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move now into a recommendation for a television series, and this series is called Off the Ground.
Yeah. And
it was shot in, it was a 3-part television series that was produced and aired in 1982. Now, really, it highlights the history of aviation in New Zealand, and I thought that this might be of particular interest to our Wairarapa
Yeah.
people, because of course, Wairarapa does indeed celebrate a strong connection to aviation. We have a strong aviation history here, but of particular note is the historical archival footage that has been included in this television series. So I'm just going to read out the overview to you as it is on the New Zealand On Screen database. So it says DIY first flyer Richard Pearce aptly leads off this 3-part 1982 series on the history of aviation in New Zealand. It's presented by pilot Peter Clements. The survey of the pioneers of the Birdman's art covers daredevil balloonists, World War I fighter pilots, flying bishops, and frontrunners like the Walsh brothers and George Bolt. But a forgotten silver treasure from the archives is the footage of Percy Fisher's monoplane. And in action, it was filmed on a hand-cranked movie camera in the Wairarapa in 1913.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
So I haven't seen it yet, but the actual full-length television program is available to view at no cost on the New Zealand On Screen database, and I think that would be really great for all of our aviation enthusiasts here in the Wairarapa.
And there are many. You know, one
There are many.
one thing that whipped by me then was you saying flying bishop. I like the way you just kept going there, as if we would accept that.
Yeah, please do accept that, but more than accept it, check it out. You've got to see it to believe it, and again, it's comical, but it's also just very historical resonation there for us. Yeah. And I've never heard of this TV series before called Off the Ground. Had you, Michael?
No, I haven't. No.
No. So I think one of the wonderful things about New Zealand On Screen and putting together some ideas for this radio show every week is what I am discovering about our screen industry too, and the very rich and diverse history of screen that we have in New Zealand is just quite remarkable.
Yes, it's a long-standing history, and we tend to know the sort of commercial highlights, but there's so much else that has gone on in New Zealand film.
Yeah, indeed. So there's my television recommendation for the week.
Off the Ground.
Off the Ground.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's the one I'm referring to in particular with the archival footage of a monoplane flying in the Wairarapa skies. Now that's part one. Off the Ground, part one, the first to fly. So they are pioneering aviators.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm now going to move into a documentary about one of our local heroes, Georgina Beyer.
Yeah.
And this is a documentary that was filmed in 2001, largely shot in Carterton.
Yep. Was that during her time as mayor? I think it would have been.
Yeah, because it's actually got footage of residents of Carterton coming in to talk to her and to seek advice and support over local issues. So I really do recommend this as well. The full-length documentary is available to view on New Zealand On Screen, but there's also the option, it says here, to buy, stream or download the title from Occasional Productions, who have the producers of this film. So the overview that we have here is that we of course know that Georgina was the first transgendered person in the world to be elected into national office. This film was co-directed by Annie Goldson and Peter Wells. Now, Annie Goldson has been making award-winning documentaries in New Zealand for decades and is actually a professor up at Auckland University, so she's got an academic background, but also is constantly making films. I don't know where she finds the time for academia and filmmaking, but somehow she does it. And just as a sideline, I would highly recommend just doing a bit of a search on Annie Goldson herself while you're looking at New Zealand on screen, because she's quite a remarkable New Zealand filmmaker in her own right. But back to Georgie Girl, it's just such a wonderful, upbeat celebration of her life, and told in her words as well. So, which of course is always very important when you're making a documentary about a well-known public figure, that you must always allow the subject to tell their own story.
Well, you're not going to have a problem with Georgina telling her own story.
No. And of course, a large part of that story is her inspiring journey to become a member of Parliament for rural Wairarapa. So the subsequent events that led her to move to Carterton are all explored in this film, and where she, of course, became heavily involved in local body politics and then went on to national politics. So, I really like this film, and I think if you haven't seen it, please do, because it's just a delightful celebration of her, and the very important contribution that she's made to Wairarapa.
Yes, and very a person who was always willing to take the piss out of herself, really. And although everybody is probably aware of that thing she said, it's worth repeating. You know, when she became mayor of Carterton, she said, "I started out as a stallion, then I became a gelding, and now I'm a mare." Yeah.
Yeah, she's got the gift of the words. She really does. If you go to the New Zealand On Screen database and put in Georgie Girl, there's quite a really very detailed overview, the credits, background, but also the great quotes from her are included there too. There's a photo gallery. There's information about all the awards that this film won, which were both New Zealand and international, which was fabulous. And as I say, the full version is available there too. So I'm just actually looking at some of the awards that Georgie Girl won. I can see that in 2002 it won the New Zealand Media Peace Awards for Best Film. Yep. Then it won Excellence in Documentary at the San Francisco International Film Festival. Best Documentary in, where am I looking? Spain.
Yep.
Sydney. Awards in France and Hawaii. Gosh, it did the rounds.
It sure did, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, as I say, the director, Annie Goldson, check her out too, because she's really cool.
Yeah. And Peter Wells involved too, you said. Peter Wells, well-known writer.
Now, do you know him, Michael?
I don't know him personally, but I certainly know his work.
Yeah, well, check him out too, because he was the co-producer for that as well. And when you start clicking on, you know, the database gives you the ability to click on the actual the cast and the crew members, and to find out their other work and what their background is and what their motivations are. And so, you know, it sort of leads you off into different paths within the database too, which is great. Now, I'm going to revisit a short film called Fog, which was made in 2007. I very briefly mentioned this in the very first lockdown isolation blues show that I did with you, Michael.
Yes, I remember.
But I'll come back and do this a bit more justice. So, yeah. So, I think this is really worth watching, and the full version again is available to view through the New Zealand On Screen database. So I just will say it's recommended for a mature audience. Yep. But it's a coming of age film. It speaks of isolation. It speaks of boredom within isolation. Yep. And indeed young people's boredom within isolation too. So the main character is a boy named Ricky, who's shy. He's a teenager, and he's got a very overbearing father who is a fisherman in Naui, and resonated for me because I've got an uncle who used to be a cray fisherman in Naui, and I spent some time there over the years, and I can visualize. It's a great community, but it's a very isolated village.
Yep.
And the film captures that beautifully. And so Ricky, he makes friends with kind of his opposite, a very extroverted young woman named Kelly, and she's played by Chelsea Preston Crayford, who comes from a filming family. And
Gayleen Preston's daughter, and Jonathan Crayford, the jazz musician.
Yes, who also lives in the Wairarapa.
Right.
So some really nice Wairarapa connections with this film. And so one day, Ricky and Kelly, out of sheer boredom, slip out into the night, commandeering Ricky's father's fishing boat, and they head out to sea what they view as freedom into the fog where no one else can see them. And the film is captured amongst all the fog out at sea, this boat. So you get Peter Salmon as the director of this short film, and, you really do feel the sense of oppression, the boredom in small town New Zealand, and which is often replayed, but in New Zealand filmmaking. But the key is to tell it in a new and a fresh way.
Yeah.
So to have your escape on a fishing boat, I kind of liked that. I like where this film is set and what it speaks to. So Fog was shot in Naui, as we know, and the Wairarapa coastline, you could say, is almost the third main subject.
Yeah.
And it was invited to 20 international film festivals, including Critics' Week at the Cannes Film Festival. In 2007, it was at the New Zealand Screen Awards, and Chelsea Preston Crayford was awarded for the best performance in a short film. So there you go.
Yeah.
On the basis of that, please do check it out. At its heart, it says here that at its heart, Fog is a coming-of-age story capturing the simple moments when a boy becomes a man. Ooh.
I'm waiting for that to happen, personally.
Well, if you need some guidance through that, Michael, please do go to the New Zealand On-Screen database and click on Fog.
Great.
I think it's about 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
So, that's almost your coffee or tea break time, isn't it? So, definitely check that out. Now, it's got the full version here, and you've even got access to the press kit for the film, and the official website for Peter Salmon as well, so you can go on and see what films that he's done. It's categorised as a drama, and I think I think that's a suitable coming of age category. It can be very drama filled, I believe. So
it's interesting, I think that New Zealand films always have a strong visual element. I don't know why, but cinematographers play a big part in the success of our films. And, you describe Fog, and I think how visually interesting it must be to set a large part of a film in a foggy environment. I mean, what must that be like to listen to? And also the sound quality, what happens when you get, you're surrounded by fog. I think that would be interesting on those levels as well.
Now, I'll also add that that the main character, Ricky, his father is played by one of my favourite New Zealand actors, Jim Moriarty, who I think is one of our finest actors. I am captivated by every performance I've ever seen Jim give. And please also check out his work, because he's remarkable. Have you ever worked with him, Michael?
Yes, I have. I've directed him in a radio play, and I know of his work a lot. And he was in a play that my wife did that went to the Oslo Festival in Norway. They were in Hedda Gabler together. So I'm aware of a lot of his work. And he used to be work in the mental health area. Oh, sorry about that. I've just got a text on the phone. And he does a lot of work where he's both in prisons and with Maori youth. So yeah, he's got an extensive and varied career.
Yeah, and I think he brings a lot of that sort of mental health background to his filmmaking as well. Yeah, he's a trained psychiatric nurse, and there was one point where he would spend 6 months of the year working in mental health, and then the other 6 months doing you're right, he would travel to New Zealand doing work with youth, and a lot of that was sort of theatre work and exploring and understanding feelings in adolescence through drama, which is quite remarkable. And he's also the uncle of funny guy Cohen Holloway, who is who when I used to be a comedy scriptwriter back in the day for the television series Facelift, Cohen was one of the actors for that show. So it was great writing and working. I always had Cohen in mind when I was writing my comedy sketches, which were largely around what Winston Peters was getting up to.
Yes, I remember you telling me. Yeah.
was getting up to, and Cohen played both of those characters, so that's a nice connection there with a sort of a filmmaking whānau as well. Two very fine actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jane, what a great list. Sorry, whenever I talk, it seems to cause your side of the phone conversation to cut out. Technology, eh? When will they get it right? I reckon 2 cans and a piece of string is what we need.
Yes. Well, we make it work, don't we, Michael?
Yes. Well, Jane, it's always a delight to have you on, and I always get the feeling as time comes up that you've got much more to say, which just means that people will have to wait until next time. Yeah.
An ever ongoing conversation around film, Michael.
Yeah. And by the time you're on next week, somebody will have made something else.
There you go. That's right. And I can talk about that. As there are also some quite cool filmmaking competitions happening at this time in New Zealand as well. So I'll leave you with this also. Is any budding young filmmakers out there, and I'm talking children and teenagers, please go to the website Misconception.
Yep.
They're currently running a kids filmmaking competition, and they're doing it brilliantly. Submissions are currently open, and they don't close until a date in May. But I can come back next week and talk more on that. But in the meantime, if I have sparked anyone's interest, please go to Misconception. Their dedicated website. There's information there about the kids filmmaking competition, and there's also a whole lot of short videos of New Zealand filmmakers giving their best advice to our youth, to our rangatahi, about the art and craft of making a short film. Brilliant.
Excellent, Jane. Look, we've got to get you, when all this is over and we're down to level 0, you've got to do your own program, because you've just got such a great breadth of knowledge and enthusiasm. Yeah.
Well, as always, you're very kind.
No. Well, it's lovely to have you on the show. I'm going to have to say goodbye. I'm going to go and figure out what's wrong with the phone line. But this has been fun, holding you up to the microphone.
Coolio. All right. We'll talk soon. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Great. Yes. Well, that's pretty much our program, because time is moving on, At 10 o'clock, we've got the library readings. What's the name of the program? It's called Book something. I can't remember, but the actual reading is from Princess of Mars. That's at 10 o'clock, coming up very soon. It's been fabulous talking with Jane. Great being with you. Being a bit of a couch potato this morning, I've enjoyed it. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.